Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have an update with ATEX Resources. ATEX trades on the venture under the ticker ATX. With me today, I have Ben Pullinger, SVP of Exploration and Business Development. He's going to give us an update on some of the exciting news that they've had out recently. As always, this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the website, on the presentation on the website, rather. The format today will be a 15 to 20-minute update, and then we'll jump into Q&A. So feel free to enter some questions in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll get to those halfway through the presentation. And I believe that Raymond Jannas may be able to join us partway through. He's CEO, so if he pops up, that's who he is. With that out of the way, Ben, thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks to Adelaide, Deb, and Magda for having us. And yeah, you're right. We've had a fair bit of exciting news out over the last little while. Starting with the resource all the way through to commencing our Phase 4 drill program, which we announced yesterday. And it's an exciting time for us, and look forward to updating everybody on where we are and what we've been up to.
Sounds good. Sounds like we've got Raymond with us too.
We have Raymond. So I'll let Raymond give a bit of an introduction, and I'll jump in on the back end.
Sounds good. Oh, Raymond, you're on mute.
Sorry for being late. I had a small emergency and I just ran in. Sorry about that to everybody. And thank you, Deborah, for having us over with Ben. And just for an introduction, I wanted to be present because we're really excited at this moment with Ben, with all the results that we've had from last year's drilling program, and now the new that have been coming out your summer, my winter, starting in September, with our 1.4 billion ton resource at a 0.67 copper equivalent, that is and about with a 0.5 gold and a 0.5 copper and 0.2 gold at a 0.4 copper cutoff. But the most important thing, and that is the essence of these, is that we have a high grade trend where we have 200 million tons at 0.84 copper equivalent. And that is what we think is going to drive the capex of the project. We think that the high grade in depth, the first thing to be exploited on an underground, will be really what's going to run this. But additionally, we discovered last year a second trend, high grade trend that is on the west side. And we just have a couple of holes into it. And we're excited that the program that just commenced this month will be drilling into that and trying to extend another high-grade trend. So we're really happy with our results. Apart from that, we came out with great metallurgical results, and Ben will go through that in more detail, better than what we have in our resource number as a percentages. And again, just as an introduction, remember we have only recognized 1 by 1 kilometer on a plan view, and all the mineralization has about 1 kilometer in depth. So we're really excited on what's coming up. And where are we? We're located totally in Chile, about 151 kilometers southeast of the town of Vallenar, along the Huasco Valley. What I want to highlight on this is the location is very close. We take about 3 hours to get there. We have almost 3,800 hectares. And we all additionally have a small inferred epithermal resource of about almost 600,000 ounces. The main thing here that I want to point out on this figure is that we're along the trend of the porphyries within Chile. We are 100% within Chile, and we're just south of the Vicuña with Filo del Sol, Josemaria, and Los Helados. And maybe Ben can point that out. And we're just south of that, and we're contiguous to El Encierro. That's a joint venture between Antofagasta and Barrick. We're just immediately south. And just after that, we have Pelambres, Andina, and El Teniente. Let's go to the next one. This is an important slide which shows our property in blue and Antofagasta JV with Barrick in orange, where our resource is highlighted as Valeriano and theirs is highlighted in blue as El Encierro. You can notice that we are along a water divide and we have two small creeks on each side. We came out with 1.4 billion tons at 0.67 equivalent. And last year in June, Antofagasta came out with 522 million tons at 0.75 copper equivalent and an inferred resource, just like we have. But they are within a 2.5 billion ton global inventory. So this is starting to grow. We put those 2.5 plus 1.4. This is already at the 4 billion tons and probably growing. Next slide, please. And this is probably one of the most important slides, and I really enjoyed how Ben put it together, showing the two creeks on each side, that the bottom of the creeks are about 3,800 meter elevation, that's indicated there, and the top of the hill is about 4,400. We're drilling below the 4,300 meter elevation. What's interesting is that you can access the project from both sides, about for a kilometer and a half from each of those creeks, and you have only 200 meters till you reach the upper part of the resource. That's with a 0.3% copper cutoff envelope. And the mineralization just starts 200 meters below, and the access is quite simple. That's what really establishes an access to the underground mineralization. And I think that's about it, and I'll leave it up to you. I'm going fast, so you guys have time for questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Raymond. Yeah, I think one of the things really to stress here is just the scale, right? We are drilling from the top of the ridge, which gives us that extra 500 meters that we have to drill through before we get to the top of mineralization, 200 meters below the valley. But, this is the scale. This is what the landscape looks like in the valleys, big, wide open, flat plains. But it's really hard unless you've been there to hammer home the scale of this. If you were to compare this to CN Tower or any of the buildings here in downtown Toronto, this would exceed that height quite handsomely. I just wanted to quickly pause here and just recap phase 3, because phase 3 was really transformational, and it was ultimately the results from phase 3 that fed into the resource that resulted in the resource that we see today at 1.4 billion tons. And just a reminder that every single one of those holes that we drilled in phase 3 hit significant copper gold mineralization, with most of the holes, especially between holes 11, hole 24 that we're finishing off as part of phase 4, holes 11A, hole 11B, 23. All those holes we're looking at close to 1,000 meters or in excess of 1,000 meters of continuous downhole mineralization. One of the other things that you can see when you're looking at the drill traces here is once you're in that 0.4 mineralization, you don't get out of it. And that really led to the consistency and continuity of the resource that we were then able to put together on the back of that. As Raymond said, we started off with the central trend here in holes 14 drilled by Hochschild, 17 later on drilled by ATEX, and have now defined 200 million tons here of high-grade mineralization. And in the western trend up here, it looks a little skinny and anemic right now because we've only got a few drill holes into it. The new discovery that we made as part of phase 3, and we're very excited to come back, extend it, expand it, and figure out where the ends and the boundaries of this western trend are. As part of that drilling, we were able to put together an updated model. I won't spend too much time on this. We can, if anyone has questions, they can ask later. But it gives us something to target for. It gives us something to work off as we move into phase 4 drilling. Touching on the resource, we were very happy with this resource. Again, it really speaks to the continuity of mineralization. All of our holes are 200 meters apart. Once you enter that 0.3, 0.4, as you can see in the traces here, grade range, you stay in it the whole way. There's no waste. There's no dilution or anything within this model because the continuity of downhole mineralization and then 200 meters apart between these drill holes is so high. I think we exceeded what our analysts had modeled, what the expectation on the resource was in terms of grade and in terms of size, which is a very good place for us to be in because you never want to be on the other side of that. And again, as Raymond talked about, that 200 million ton high grade core is really what we see as being the engine for this. An important thing here is that the resource was calculated at $3.15 copper, and the recoveries that we use, we'll talk on the recent network in a bit. The recoveries that we used for this are, we're under what we actually think we can get based on that network. But the values that you see here, the 0.84, and the 0.67 copper equivalent, those are based on recovered numbers, not in situ. I really like this graphic because it really gives a good kind of overview as to what the size and quantum of this asset and this resource. 15.5 billion pounds of copper, 9 million ounces of gold, and we think there's still a lot of room to grow. But that is a substantial resource, and it really has only been put together over the last year and a half, 2 years, and is genuinely a new project, new discovery in the copper space, especially in Latin America. One other thing that we, just talking about how the resource was put together and the philosophy behind it, we ended up looking at, coming up with a cutoff grade that equated to 0.28 copper, which was based on a $21.30 mining, milling, processing, G&A, and sales cost, which is inflated above what we saw in the market on an average basis when we looked at all the other kind of block cave operations and bulk tonnage underground operations, especially other South American comps that are in study phase. And so we added some extra, we added some extra dollars to that, added some quantum to that, still came up with that 0.28 copper cutoff grade, which we then rounded up to 0.3. We created our mining shapes at 0.3 and then reported the resource entirely within that at 0.4. And really the reason for doing that is at 0.4, we end up with that 0.67 grade, which would basically be your average run of mine grade for the project. And if you go to equate that to dollar value of recovered rock, you're looking at mid 50s in terms of $50 per rock for every ton that you mine. And so you're already more than double your break-even cutoff grade. When you start to look at the high grade as well, and we get up to that 0.91%, you're looking at rock that's in the $80 range. In terms of in-situ value, you're looking at 3 to 4 times your cutoff with so your break-even, which allows you really to generate a lot of cash flow and pay back capital really quickly. And that's really the two things that we wanted to look at. But if you look at this at a 0.3 cutoff, you can see we end up with almost 2.5 billion tons of 30.7 billion pounds of copper contained. That really puts this project up there in terms of knocking on the door of being one of the top 10 undeveloped projects on the planet right now. The met work that we did was very timely, and I think again is another de-risk and another tick mark for this project, especially when we looked at the grades that we used at the bottom here, the recoveries that we used for the resource, and compare that to what we actually got at the end of that study. We did the study at a PEA level. We sent over 100 kilos of sample for 3 composites. It was very well done. And we ended up with results that showing that we can recover up to 95% of our copper, especially in the high grade composite, which would be this area down here where we envisage starting production. And with the addition of a leach circuit to the flotation, you get up to 94% of the gold. So this is really best in class recoveries. You're recovering most of the available metal, and with a very simple flow sheet that doesn't require too much trickery or additional chemistry experiments. And the most important thing at the end of this is we produce a very clean, very saleable concentrate at a good grade that could travel anywhere in the world and would find a home in any smelter. Very excited with the news we put out yesterday as well, that we now have 2 drill rigs turning, a 3rd one on the way. It'll arrive next week. But really starting to build off where we were last year, take advantage of what we've seen, especially in terms of hole 12 over here, which will be an exciting hole drilling out to the west, and I'll touch on that in more detail. But also finishing off hole 24. If you remember, hole 24 hit 670 meters at 0.84% copper equivalent, with 312 meters at the bottom of that hole at 1%, and we left it kind of in the middle of the central trend here. And it also was a very important hole because it moved the western contact of the central trend another 70 meters over to the west. As you can see on this, we still don't know. There's no drilling out on the eastern contact for the central trend out here, so we're very excited to see what that looks like. And this hole really has the potential to be a pretty spectacular hole. At 670 meters, it's already looking good. And we have another 400 to 500 meters to go. And we're still sitting in that 1% rock. So I think this will be a very exciting hole, and probably the first hole that we'll finish on this program. As we mentioned earlier, we discovered the western trend kind of in the middle of the phase 3 program. and we're only able to access it from holes directly above it. So as part of this program, we really want to see what that western trade looks like, get into the edge of the porphyry here, but also we believe that there's a significant target to be tested out here for more mineralization, very similar to what we see at Encierro, and very similar to what we see above the porphyries here. We've got 500 to 700 meters of mineralization sitting above the porphyry, the granodiorite porphyries, and we really have never drilled out to the east or west of that, and have no idea how far in those directions we generate more mineralization. So we think that this could be a pretty significant target and a pretty important hole as well. Ultimately, the game plan here is we think there's space to significantly increase this resource. Based on using a proxy with some of our geophysics, which images the ultra low resistivity zone that sits above that porphyry interface. You can see that we have more than enough space to at least double the area that we can test within this, and hopefully significantly increase that resource as we drill to the north, south, west. And we haven't even had the chance to really get out to the east and see what we have there yet either. So that might be something that could provide more surprises as we work our way over there in the future. The ultimate game plan, as Raymond mentioned earlier, we've got about 4 billion tons of high quality copper here between two projects already. Both of these projects are really just getting up and running. We've only been exploring at Valeriano for a year and a half to 2 years now. Encierro is getting their drill rigs running this year as well. And we think over time, there's more discoveries here to be made. Both of these projects will continue to see growth in their resources. And this is becoming what we think is a world-class district that will only get bigger as more dollars get expended in exploration here. Again, in a more graphical way of looking at that, we've got the Encierro project at inferred resource. We've got our inferred resource here at a 0.4 cutoff. And you can see on a combined basis, the projects are moving very far out into this world-class block. If you started to look at the inventory and gave us a little bit more credit, we are starting to move into the 2 to 4 billion ton range on a resource basis. That's not including the Encierro global inventory. In terms of cash position as well, we currently have close to $20 million Canadian available to us as we start off this program. Included in that is cash in the treasury right now, as well as the ability to draw down on this facility another $5 million US and get us deep into this drill program, and hopefully have some pretty spectacular results out along the way, especially with hole 24 and potentially 12 being done and completed by the end of this year, and bringing forward some of those results will be pretty exciting for us. It's always nice to see the wish list getting filled out, but as you can see, we've ticked the boxes on everything that we've wanted to do so far this year, and are now into October, commencing our phase 4 program. And really for the rest of the year for us, it's going to be drill, especially now that we filed our technical report that supports the resource. We filed that last night, and that's out there. Really, we can turn our attention to just drilling, getting good results, and keeping this program going and adding value with the drill bit. I'll kind of pause here and hand it back to Raymond if he has any comments. Or else, Deb, we can start to move towards Q&A.
My only comment, Ben, is how excited we are with the growth that we've had in a year and a half. That's been amazing. We're really excited on what's coming up. We think that this is going to be the next big world-class deposit of porphyries in Chile. I think there's nothing else in Chile that's coming into this size and this grade. It has a bit of challenges, but it's not any significant one, more than, make it grow and see the amount of high grade we can get to make this plausible. And I think we might be the drivers of the high grade because we have continuity in our high grade, which hasn't been found on other sites yet.
Okay, great. You guys want to jump into some questions?
Sure.
Awesome. And if any audience members have questions, feel free to enter them in, but I'll get started. So of the 15 to 20,000 meters planned for phase 4, how much of this drilling would focus on the existing 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer mineralized corridor?
I mean, yeah, so it's a bit of a balance, right? Because part of the program between now and 2025 is working towards the initial economic study on this project. And one of the things we want to do is have as much of the central trend and western trend, the high grade porphyries, drilled off to a higher level of confidence to underpin that work. So some of that drilling will go into that, but then drilling like hole 12, which is going to be drilling out to the west, we'll be testing a new frontier. We'll be pushing the western boundary of that 1 kilometer, and if we're successful there, we're going to be coming back from the west, drilling east, and really starting to bulk out and add more area and hopefully some tonnage to the west. So we're going to be able to do both as part of this program. But I'd say probably it's a 60-40 mix between drilling and defining the central western trend, and then stepping out and drilling to the west and to the north, and following up on holes that expanded the mineralized corridor last year.
Okay. And talking about the central west trends, how much of the drilling would be new holes versus extending existing holes?
Especially for the start of the program, where we want to try and make a big impact very quickly in the program and get some good results out. We are with being able to use directional drilling and having the contractors that we have, we are able to use a lot of the historical holes as infrastructure to generate new holes out of. Like hole 12, for example, is coming out of a hole that was drilled in 2012 by Hochschild. Hole 24, obviously we're finishing that. And then we plan to come out of hole 17, drill to the south and extend the central trend to the south, but using the existing holes as much as we can to shorten the times to results, and also reduce the amount of meters that we have to drill from surface. There will be new holes as part of the program as well, and that will kind of like later in the program.
So you're going to be testing both along strike and at depth?
Exactly, along strike, and for the initial focus of the program, it'll be along strike and pushing out to the west and looking to define the contacts of the western trend.
Okay, maybe you could put this program in context in terms of it being the largest porphyry exploration campaign at Valeriano to date. You talk a little bit about prior campaigns and how this would measure up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the prior campaigns that drilled on this program, phase 2 was about, I think, 7,000 meters, Raymond, or 5,900 meters.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 5,900. Last year we drilled 12,153 meters, and this, we're targeting north of 15,000 meters. If we got to the upper end of the program, we're getting to the kind of 20,000 meter mark, which would pretty much double the amount of drilling that we have in the project to date. So considering the holes that you see here, pretty tightly constrained. Most of these holes are within 200 meters of each other. We really have a compact, well-defined center of gravity already. So as we continue to step out and double the amount of drilling and move out to the west, to the north, to the south as well, you can see that we start to add tons very quickly. And 20,000 meters, I don't know if we'll double the resource, but it does give us a lot of drilling to have more confidence in some of the high grade trend, but also really to push the envelope again and start to see further growth outside of what we've defined today.
And do you have an expected budget for a phase 4 drill program?
So in an ideal world, we'd love to extend this program, throw some more drill rigs at it in next year, and really give it as much as we can, and that would be on the upper end of like $30 million US. For what we for doing the 15,000 to 20,000 meter program, we'd be looking at roughly 18 to 20 million US, and somewhere in there is I think where this program will land.
Okay. And next steps after the program, will you be looking to update the resource?
Raymond, you're...
No, I think we came up with a good resource. I think this campaign is not necessary to increase a resource, it's to advance towards a PEA. We believe that we'll be at PEA status about 2 years from now, next campaign next year, and we'd come up to a PEA. hopefully after drilling another 40,000 meters minimum, then take us to that level. And that's probably the time we'll come up with another resource.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we probably will do is we've now done some very comprehensive network on the central trend, but as we add more material, get more holes and better define the west trend, for example, we'd probably do the same kind of program on that, and start to just build up that body of work as well.
Makes sense. And then going on to discuss the September resource. So the resource outlined 3 different porphyry units, the early, intermineral, late porphyry. Which unit carries the best grade?
Yeah, that one's easy. So if you can see my hand here, the early porphyry, the big blobs here, these are the center of gravity for the project. That 200 million tons that we saw as the high-grade core is all pretty much within this central trend, early porphyry here. And as we start to put more holes into the western trend, I think we'll start to see that contributing to that second high-grade core. But the mineralization and the grade is really driven by these granodiorite porphyries that have the chalcopyrites and bornite within them. And then, from the context of this bleeding out, 700, 800 meters outside of these porphyries, you get chalcopyrite mineralization in the rhyolites, ultimately tapering down to 0.3 where the edge of the resource is.
And what's the average depth that the high-grade core starts at?
So it starts, I think, around 3,200 meters and goes down, or 3,300 meters and runs down to 2,200 meters at the base of the resource, and it's still open at depth.
And what sort of grades are you seeing in the high-grade core?
Right between 0.9 and 1% copper equivalent in situ, which gives you your 0.84 to 0.9 recovered values, depending on whether you use the 95% copper or the 90 that we assumed for the resource. If you use the 95, you're getting closer to 9.9% copper equivalent recovered. And
is the higher grade core found across both trends?
So we have some pretty spectacular results. If you remember hole 11B, which is the 1,300 meters at 0.7, including 1,100 meters at close to 0.8. That was a very spectacular hole, the discovery hole for the western trend. We've seen the same kind of grades and some higher grade components as well on the holes that we stepped out to the north and the south. But one thing is that we're really excited about as part of this program is we only really drilled vertically down mineralization or down the grain of the porphyry as part of that program. So we think as we get across the porphyry, we're able to step back and get a better slice through it. We hope to see more stuff like we see in the central trend, especially hole 17, 14, and what we've got going on in 24 right now, and start to bulk out some more high grade on the western trend.
One last question on the resource. So how many meters of drilling did this resource incorporate?
So it's around 22,000 meters of drilling. And again, remember that in all those drill holes, you're looking at 1,000 meters plus of continuous downhole mineralization, 200 meters apart. So it is very well constrained, actually, when you look at the scale within that, 800 meters to a kilometer along strike. It's actually, the continuity of mineralization and the consistency really, speaks to is the reason that the resource came out the way it did. Yeah.
Moving on to the metallurgical work. So given the MET results released last week, what could a potential material handling and processing scenario look like for Valeriano?
I mean, that's a tough one, right? We can very much, yeah. I mean, what we like to do internally is look at what else is out there in the market and kind of benchmark against existing projects. And I think if you were to look at something like a Red Chris or something like Acadia, you're looking at an operation that has between 10 million tons of throughput annually to 16 million tons of throughput annually, and produces a lot of copper. And I think for a bulk underground mine, I think that's probably the range that we would think about at this point as a standalone, without including Encierro to the north, which would obviously very much change that scenario. But I think if you were to run your numbers or play around with 10 million tons per annum on this, especially when you look at the high grade core where you've got 20 years that you're producing at 3 to 4 times your break even, this would generate a lot of cash and pay back a lot of capital very quickly.
Moving on to some more corporate focused questions. Do you anticipate drawing on the second tranche of the credit facility?
Yeah, if required, we will. We haven't done that yet. It'll depend really on how the market behaves and to our results. We expect that our results will be very positive, and we expect a market reaction to that. We might raise money. If not, we'll wait a minute and go to a second tranche.
And maybe you could give us an update on the political situation and stance on mining in Chile. I know it's been a bit of a unfolding scenario. So yeah, it'd be good to get an update if you don't mind.
Sure. First of all, and I always start with the same phrase, Chile is a mining country and will continue to be a mining country. That's for sure. That's where the most of the income comes from. So that will not change. Everybody's worried a bit about the lithium and the Chilean, quote unquote, that they say a nationalization or something. That is not true, because lithium has been a strategic element since the last constitution in the 1970s, 78. Okay, it was the only metal put as strategic. So it's the only metal that's treated that for you to be able to access to it, you have to have a permission from the Chilean government. But it's the only one. Okay, and now that lithium is so hot at this moment, the Chilean government decided, yeah, we want to participate on this now, but they only can do it with that element, with that metal. So on the other side, I'd say that in general, getting permits are as always go through the system. You have to do it and has to go through all the process. Might take a little more time getting all the information put together, and it will be no problem to get permits if everything is under the right conditions, especially considering sustainability during your process.
Okay, thanks for that. One last question from me. So what are some of the high-level options you see for the long-term future of Valeriano and the district? Maybe you could talk a bit about how you see this playing out.
Okay, well, definitely there's a tremendous synergy between El Encierro and Valeriano. I think what is going to drive that district is going to be enough high grade to assure an underground operation. Both El Encierro and Valeriano will be underground. So what we need is an assurance of high grade for the CapEx. And I think we might be advancing very strongly on that with our results, and maybe we will trigger that. But additionally, this is going to be one operation. I don't know how many companies will own certain percentages of it. That'll be in the future. I think it's going to be the big district that's going to play for Chile in the next future. But together with this, we have another deposit quite close by. That's Fortuna, and that's Teck, and they will be requiring some infrastructure, same as us. So probably water that will be required by both areas might come from a synergy of doing things together. So, and if Pascua comes into place, additional. So along the Huasco Valley, there's a lot of projects coming into place, probably in the next 10 years, and that can benefit of doing things together as a synergy. So I think this is going to be probably the next big system, together with Vicuña coming up north between Argentina and Chile.
All right. Well, that's pretty much all the questions that I had. I guess the last one is, with drilling just commencing now, what do you anticipate the turnaround times and news flow kind of timing to look like?
Yeah, I mean, with hole 24, we only need another 400 to 500 meters to go. We're hoping that that's something that we can have completed and assays turned around and be able to put out as a Christmas present before the end of the year. Depending on how far we go with 12A, we'll see whether that can be completed as well. But we should have steady news flow once we start with hole 24, 12A, and the way that we sequence things. We should have steady news flow from now basically all the way through to the summer, June, July, Raymond's winter, and be able to keep putting out hopefully more of the same that we put out in phase 3, which will be very exciting. And maybe we make some new discoveries along the way, like we did in phase 3 as well. and it's going to be a very exciting program.
Sounds good to me. Was there anything you guys wanted to cover in the session today that we didn't get around to?
No.
We're fine.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do an update and answer some questions. And thanks to the audience for participating. If you have any additional questions or you'd like a one-on-one call, just feel free to reach out and I'll get that set up for you. And yeah, with that, everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.